What is up, my maniacs? I'm the Awesome Maniac, and today is a special day because today is Friday the 13th. And if you know or have been around my channel long enough, you know that we usually celebrate on Friday the 13th. I've had two previous Friday the 13th specials over the last few years, and I wanted to get back with my first video, making one for May, Friday the 13th, 2022. And the way I'm going to be doing that is by doing a timeline of the series, which I've seen posts on wikis about it. I've seen YouTube videos from certain channels, but I wanted to do one myself because I wanted to tie all the different ideas that those things that I've looked at have done and try to make as best coherent timeline as best I can. I'm not just going to be reading off years and what happened in those years. I will also be attempting to show you how I got those dates for it. So, without further ado, I'm gonna get into this. White settlers murder an entire tribe of Indians at Crystal Lake, including the shaman. For many years, the lake and woods would claim lives and souls in an endless search for the right vessel to bring their hatred ashore. This is shown in the Friday the 13th miniseries commentary. In 1930, Pamela Sue Voorhees is born, as shown in her grave in Friday the 13th final chapter. In 1935, the Christie family established Camp Crystal Lake. First shown in Friday the 13th, and if you look up any images of the original sign, it'll show you that Crystal Lake was established in 1935. In 1936, a fire burned down the counselor's bunkhouse and killed 5 of them. This is also not shown in the miniseries, but it is stated to have happened. June 13th, 1946. Jason Voorhees is born to Pamela and Elias Voorhees. Pamela raises her son apart from other children in the Voorhees house. Elias Voorhees has been a center of topic for many Friday the 13th fans, originally in the script for Jason Lives, but was then later named on screen in Jason Goes to Hell during the report. (1957). In the summer, Pamela receives the job of cook at Camp Crystal Lake. While there, 11-year-old Jason accidentally drowns in the lake after being bullied by most of the other campers. While this was happening, none of the counselors were paying any attention, instead having sex and talking, not paying attention to Jason being bullied or drowning. Afterwards, nobody is found, and it is assumed that Jason had drowned. This is the classic story in Friday the 13th that everyone discusses when they talk about the legend of Jason, that he was 11 years old and he drowned in 1957. In 1958, on June Friday the 13th, Pamela, driven mad with grief over her son's death, kills 2 counselors, Barry and Claudette, at Camp Crystal Lake. The killer is never apprehended and the camp is soon shut down. This is shown in the very beginning of Friday the 13th, 1980. From 1958 to 1962, several attempts are made to reopen Camp Crystal Lake in the years that follow, but are soon halted by mysterious fires. Annie the Hitchhiker is told this in the original Friday the 13th. In 1959, Alice Hardy is born somewhere in California to Mr. and Mrs. Hardy. This would make her 20 years old in Friday the 13th, and that seems just about the right age because she is talking about college, and she doesn't have an exact date, but this is roughly the age I would put her at.
In
1962, an attempt to reopen Camp Crystal Lake is halted by a case of poisoned water. The camp comes to be regarded by locals as having a death curse and is nicknamed Camp Blood. Again, this is shown in the original Friday the 13th. In 1968, Trish Jarvis is born. Given that she's 16 in 1984, this makes sense. 1972, Tommy Jarvis is born. Again, he's 12 years old in 84, so this would be his birthday. 1976, Stephen Freeman is born. Now, it never says his age in Jason Goes to Hell, but reading through the wiki saying that he's 25, that seems like a reasonable age. And if he's 25 whenever that movie happens, then he would have been born this year. 1978, Jessica Kimball is born Diana Kimball. Again, information taken from the wiki, but it seems to fit from the states. Stephen Christie, determined to reopen Camp Crystal Lake, begins to spend $25,000 to renovate the abandoned camp. June 13, 1979. Pamela Voorhees goes on a killing spree at Camp Crystal Lake, trying to stop the camp from being reopened. She kills Steve Christie and 6 of his newly hired counselors. Finally, the mad woman is decapitated with a machete by the only surviving counselor, Alice Hardy. Jason Voorhees, having either returned from the dead or never actually drowned, witnesses his mother's death and takes her head and several articles of her clothing, as well as the machete that killed her. In August, against her parents' wishes, Alice returns to the town of Crystal Lake to conquer her fears surrounding the events that transpired 2 months previously. One night, Jason Voorhees enters the apartment where she is staying and murders her. He takes her body to a shack in the woods in Camp Crystal Lake. Summer. While staying at her family's summer home, Higgins Haven, Chris Higgins gets in a fight with her parents and runs into the woods. There, she is attacked by Jason Voorhees. Chris passes out and awakens back at home. Her parents refuse to speak of the incident. This is shown in Friday the 13th Part 3, where Chris tells Rick about this. Tina Shepard and Rennie Wickham are born. Even though Part 7 and 8 came out in 88 and 89, they are not set that year, and we'll get to that later, but just know for now, this is the year that Rennie and Tina Wickham born. July 12th, Paul Holt's counselor training program at Packanack Lodge is open. Jason Voorhees, wearing a burlap sack to cover his face, kills local doomslayer Ralph Neely. July, Friday the 13th. Enraged that the Crystal Lake area is being intruded upon, Jason kills 6 of the counselors in training, a local police officer, and the dog of one of the counselors. Eventually, Jason is faced by Jenny Field and Paul Holt. Jenny discovers Jason's shack and manages to slice his left shoulder open with the same machete that killed Pamela Voorhees and stops Paul from being attacked by Jason. Jenny and Paul arrive at one of the cabins to rest, thinking they have killed Jason. Jenny falls asleep and has a nightmare that Jason attacks her once more. July 14th. The police arrive at Packanack Lodge. Jenny is rescued, but Paul's fate isn't quite exactly known. That night, Jason gets a new set of clothes from the laundry line of Harold Hockett and then proceeds to murder Harold and his wife. Jason then spends the night at Higgins Haven. Pretty easy to pinpoint this for being in 1984 because it's supposed to be 5 years after the original, which we have already established is set in 1979. And as I've just explained, the plot of 2 and the beginning of 3, those happen on the very same day. At the beginning of the day, Jenny is taken away, and at the end of the day, Jason kills the Hocketts and spends the night in the barn. July 15th. Chris Higgins and 5 of her friends go on a weekend trip to Higgins Haven, picking up Sheldon Finkelstein's blind date, Vera Sanchez, on the way. Upon their arrival, Jason kills the vacationers one by one, as well as Chris's boyfriend Rick and the 3 members of a motorcycle gang. During the massacre, Jason obtains a hockey mask from Shelley, which he uses to replace the sack as a mask. After a lengthy confrontation with Chris, who recognizes Jason as the person who terrorized her in the woods 2 years previously, the girl acts as the madman in the face, seemingly killing him. July 16th. The police find Chris in an unbalanced state, hysterically talking of a lady in the lake. That night, the bodies of Jason and the 10 victims at Higgins Haven are transported to Wessex County Morgue. There, Jason revives and kills a coroner and a nurse and hides their bodies before making his escape. July 17th. A group of 6 vacationing teenagers arrive at the cottage next door to that of the Jarvis family, where Mrs. Jarvis and her children, Trish and Tommy, are currently residing. Jason kills a stranded hitchhiker on his way back to Crystal Lake. July 18th. Rob Deere arrives at Crystal Lake, determined to hunt down Jason for the murder of his sister Sandra at the Packanack Lodge 5 days ago. The murderer kills the vacationing teenagers as well as Mrs. Jarvis, Rob, and a set of teenage twins. Trish and Tommy fight for their lives until Tommy impales Jason's head on his own machete. Seeing that Jason is still demonstrating signs of life, Tommy stabs the killer over and over again, screaming "die" endlessly. And so we can easily place Part 2, 3, and 4 in 1984, given that Part 2 is 5 years after the original, and Part 3 and 4 take place directly after each other. So all in all, a busy first week of killing for Jason. Jason Voorhees is buried in the Eternal Peace Cemetery, although officials of nearby towns are led to believe that his body was cremated. Tommy, heavily traumatized by his experience, spends the next few years being transferred from one mental institution to the next. "1985, Laurie Campbell and Will Rollins are born. Given that they're 18 in 2003, which is also the same year that Freddy vs. Jason came out in theaters, this would put their birthday at this year. Wanting to distance itself from the Voorhees murders, officials changed the name of the town and lake from Crystal Lake to Forest Green. This is shown and stated in Freddy vs. Part 6. October 11th. Tommy Jarvis, no longer a legal ward of the state, is sent free from the Unger Institute of Mental Health to Pinehurst Halfway House. That day, Victor J. Fadden axes fellow patient Joey to death. Paramedic Roy Burns, Joey's father, is horrified at the sight of Joey's body and swears revenge on the residents of the halfway house. That night, Roy disguises himself as Jason Voorhees and kills 2 greasers. October 12th. Roy kills an ambulance driver and his girlfriend. October, Friday the 13th. Roy goes on a full-out killing spree against the residents of a Pinehurst halfway house and the surrounding locals. His victims include the head doctor, the cook, 5 of Pinehurst's teenage patients, neighbors Ethel and Junior Hubbard, a drifter, the cook's elder grandson, and his girlfriend and his own partner. Roy's rampage is finally halted by Pamela Roberts, Reggie, and Tommy. Roy is impaled on a set of tractor harrows in the halfway house barn. Even further unsettled, Tommy attacks Pam in the hospital, but is subdued. So Tommy is said to be 12 in 1984 and 18 in this movie, which is not stated in the movie, but it's on the box art of the VHS. You know, if that was the case, that would put this movie in 1990. However, given that Tommy is also 18 in Jason Lives, that movie is set in the summer, but New Beginning is set in late October. This means that Tommy would have to turn 13 in between June and October of 1984, which would put this 5 years later. July 12th. Tommy Jarvis and his friend Alan Hawes go to the Eternal Peace Cemetery to dig up and destroy Jason Voorhees' body. Upon seeing his body, Tommy has an audio flashback and repeatedly stabs Jason's corpse. However, things go awry when a lightning bolt strikes the fence post and reanimates Jason, increasing his strength and essentially making him indestructible. Jason kills Hawes and, wearing a new hockey mask constructed by Tommy, sets out for Camp Crystal Lake, now reopened as Camp Forest Green. Tommy makes it to the police station and is locked up by Sheriff Michael Garris, who deems the boy crazy. En route to the camp, Jason kills the head counselors. July, Friday the 13th. Jason goes on a killing spree at Camp Forest Green, claiming the lives of 5 executives playing a paintball game, the cemetery caretaker, a young couple, 3 of the remaining camp counselors, a teenage girl, Sheriff Garris, and 2 of his police officers. Tommy and Megan Garris eventually manage to chain Jason to a large rock at the bottom of Lake Forest Green. Now, the way I have certain dates for this is because if you take into account kids going to summer camp and the Friday the 13th of 1990, only June fits. October. While staying with her parents at Crystal Lake, 7-year-old Tina Shepard's telekinetic powers manifest for the first time, while also causing the death of her father John Shepard. Afterwards, Tina spends the next few years being treated at a mental hospital. Sometime after the Forest Green murders, officials decide to change the area name back to Crystal Lake. Camp Crystal Lake signs are restored. Now, in one of the audio commentaries, the director of Part 7, John Carl Buechler, states that Jason has been underwater for 10 years. And that's the case. In the prologue of The New Blood, it shows that the calendar is in October, which would put it in the later year of 1990. Summer. 14-year-old Rennie Wickham visits Crystal Lake and nearly drowns when she is pushed into the lake by her uncle, who is trying to teach her how to swim. She hallucinates a child Jason attempting to drown her, which she nearly does. She is left haunted by her encounter with him, becoming aquaphobic. Now, it's stated in the script for Jason Takes Manhattan that this happens 4 years before Manhattan, which would put this in 1997. June, Friday the 13th. Tina Shepard, now 17, returns to Crystal Lake with her mother Amanda and her therapist, Dr. Cruz. Tina becomes acquainted with the teenagers staying at the house next door, preparing a surprise birthday party for Michael, one of their friends. That night, Tina tries to resurrect her father John with the powers, but instead frees the dormant Jason Voorhees. Tina passes out and is spared by Jason, but he does kill Michael, his girlfriend, and a camping couple. June 14th. Jason kills 9 of the teenagers staying at the party cottage, as well as Amanda and Dr. Cruz. A distraught Tina uses her telekinesis to fight Jason, destroying the 2 houses while doing so. Finally, Tina reanimates her father's corpse to chain Jason back up at the bottom of the lake and collapses the dock on top of him. June 15th. The police rescue Tina and Nicholas Rogers, Michael's cousin. Jason's original hockey mask is found, having been broken in half during his fight with Tina. I know it can be hard to imagine just because the movie came out and was made in the late 80s that it's actually set in 2000, but according to the timeline, it is. It's 10 years after Jason Lives, which took place in 1990, so we're officially in the 2000s. Stephanie Kimball is born to Jessica Kimball and Stephen Freeman. Given that she's just a baby and Jason Goes to Hell and everything else I'm going to describe later on, this would put her birth in 2001. The night before the senior class of Lakeview High School is scheduled to depart for New York City, 2 of the students, Jim Miller and Susie Donaldson, arrive at Crystal Lake. The anchor of their boat catches on an underwater power line and electrifies Jason Voorhees back to life. He kills the 2 students and sails the boat to the harbor. The next day, Jason reaches the cruise ship SS Lazarus just before it departs for New York. The undead madman kills 6 of the students and 3 of the crew. A crew member is killed as well. Rennie, her classmates Sean Robertson, Julia Skaw, her teacher Colleen Van Duzen, her uncle Charles McCulloch, and her dog Toby manage to flee the ship on the lifeboat, but the rest of the students drown as the ship sinks. Jason swims after the survivors in secret. That night, Rennie and company end up in New York. Jason pursues them and kills Julius, McCulloch, and 5 New York City residents. Rennie and Sean are chased into the sewers and barely escape while Jason is washed away by a flood of toxic waste. As a new day dawns, Rennie, Sean, and Toby go to explore New York. Now, the way I can justify this movie being set in 2001 is using the other movies to identify this. Because in the beginning it stated that about 30 years ago was when Jason drowned, which would put this movie in 1987 or 1988, which just doesn't fit at all. Just another reason why I really don't like this movie. But the way I can place it in 2001 is, if you look at it, Friday the 13th Part 7 is set of June, which would be after the school year. Considering that this is the graduating class, it'd have to be at least May of the following year at the earliest. It's also stated in the Freddy vs. Jason novelization that the ambush on Jason, which had occurred in Jason Goes to Hell, happened a few years previous, which would put that at least early 2001. And given that we can't place this movie any later than that, I would have to say that Jason Takes Manhattan and Jason Goes to Hell happen directly after one another, which makes sense because the FBI were able to actually identify Jason for rampaging through New York and follow him back to Crystal Lake. June 12th. FBI agent Elizabeth Marcus lures Jason Voorhees to a trap in which he is shot repeatedly and blown to pieces. Bounty hunter Creighton Duke makes an appearance on American Case File concerning the death of Jason Voorhees, but after being brought to the Youngstown Federal Morgue, Jason's spirit possesses Phil the coroner and makes him eat his heart. Jason kills assistant coroner Eric Pope and the 2 FBI agents before leaving for Crystal Lake in search of a Voorhees family member through whom he can be reborn by transferring his heart. After his escape from the morgue, Jason kills 3 young adults fooling around at Camp Crystal Lake, He then kidnaps and possesses Josh, an officer, after killing his girlfriend. Josh, Jason, goes to the apartment of his half-sister Diana Voorhees Kimball and kills her, but is prevented from possessing her body and being reborn by Stephen Freeman. Jason transfers his soul from Josh to news reporter Robert Campbell. June, Friday the 13th. Robert Jason goes after Jessica Kimball and her infant daughter Stephanie, still trying to be reborn. Along the way, Robert Jason kills 3 police officers, the families owning the local diner, and a waitress. Jason's soul is then transferred to Randy Parker, another officer, who gets his throat cut open by Stephen. Jason's heart crawls in Diana's body and he is finally reborn. After killing Creighton Duke, Jason is stabbed in his heart with a mystical dagger by Jessica and sent to hell. His hockey mask still remained, but Freddy Krueger reached out of the ground and pulled his mask into hell. Like I said before, the way I can place this movie where it is because of the novelization of Freddy vs. Jason, stating the ambush was at least a few years ago, which in my mind would be at least 2 years, which would make Jason Takes Manhattan and Jason Goes to Hell as concurrent as they could be. March. Freddy Krueger resurrects Jason Voorhees and after taking the form of Pamela Voorhees, sends him to Springwood, Ohio to kill some of the town's teenagers and generate enough fear to allow Freddy to return. The night Jason arrives in Springwood, he kills 2 boys and one of their fathers. Freddy now has enough power to return due to the fear caused by the 3 deaths. Meanwhile, Will Rollins and Mark Davis have escaped from Weston Hills. Will's girlfriend Lori Campbell and her friends begin to understand what is going on, and their newfound knowledge of Krueger makes them vulnerable. The next night, Freddy enters the dreams of Lori's friend Gibb, but is enraged when Jason steals his victim, killing Gibb and another raver in the real world before Freddy can kill her in her dream. Jason then goes on a rampage, killing at least 8 more ravers. The survivors of the rave include Lori, Will, Kia Watterson, Charlie Linderman, and Bill Freeberg. Later, Freddy kills Mark, then he falls asleep at his old house. The rave survivors and Officer Scott Stubbs decide to go to Weston Hills and get some Hypnoseal dream suppressant to be safe from Freddy. Jason follows them there and kills Stubbs, Freeberg, and a security guard before Freddy brings him into the dream world, where he figures out he's been fooled. Lori, Will, Kia, and Linderman begin to transport Jason's comatose body to Crystal Lake as Freddy discovers Jason's deep-seated fear of water, which is not usually present in the real world. Lori falls asleep and enters Jason's dream, which involves his childhood drowning. Lori manages to wake Jason up and drag Freddy into the real world. After killing Linderman and Kia, Jason turns his attention to Freddy and an epic battle begins. The fight concludes with Jason's battered body falling into Crystal Lake and Lori decapitating Freddy with Jason's machete. Jason emerges from the lake, clutching Freddy's still animate head. Now, the way that this is set in 2003 is actually from a few things. Mainly from the Nightmare on Elm Street film series, which in this film is stated that the town has had 4 years of peace from Freddy Krueger. 4 years ago would have been 1999, which was actually when Freddy's Dead is set, because it's set 10 years after The Dream Child, which is explicitly set in 1989. So in order to place this on the Friday the 13th timeline, I actually had to look at Nightmare on Elm Street's timeline. Fall. A couple, Randy and Diane, are driving near Crystal Lake when they hit a wandering Jason. He kills them and strings their corpses on a nearby tree. Summer. A cleanup crew for the nearby Camp Tomorrow arrives, led by Kevin Carney. They get the first night free, so they party. Jason kills 2 couples while a third, Violet DeFalco and Rich, escape him and regroup with Kevin and a few others. Jason murders another couple and a handyman. The remaining crew attempt to escape, but Kevin holds them at gunpoint. They flee him, and another couple are brutalized by Jason right before a group of soldiers hail gunfire on him. They use hoses to freeze Jason, and Violet and Rich are captured. The pair conclude that they were used to lure Jason to the soldiers because they were orphans and nobody would miss them. Violet attacks Kevin, stealing a shotgun and using it to free Jason to take out the soldiers. Jason slaughters the remainder of the soldiers as Violet and Rich commandeer a truck filled with liquid nitrogen. They learn that the organization want Jason to study him. Jason forces them to crash into a checkpoint after setting off a mine. Violet sets off the truck and it freezes the nearby soldiers and Jason. Violet stops a car only to learn Kevin was driving it. She kills him and Jason thaws out and kills 2 nearby hunters. Rich begins to pass out from his injuries as Violet crashes into a tank. Rich dies and Violet is captured by the organization. Jason murders a patrol and Violet seduces a guard and steals his weapon. She tells Jason the soldiers are the ones who mess with him, and he slaughters a masked group of soldiers. He kills them, and Violet attempts to escape through a window, but Jason captures and kills her. This is a story I had not read before, but it is canon to Friday the 13th lore, hence why I included it here. And the way I can set this in 2004 and 5 is because whenever Jason killed the couple at the very beginning, they had stated that wasn't hockey canceled this year, which happened in the 2004-2005 hockey season. And given that the story later on with Violet and Rich and the soldiers is set 6 months after that, that put this in the summer of 2005. A group of counselors arrive at Crystal Lake and prepare to reopen it under the guidance of the new owner, Trevor Gaines. Two of them lay on the dock talking when Jason pops out of the lake and kills them both, dragging their bodies into it. The next day, the counselors begin repairs on the camp as Sally and Mike ride into town looking for the missing counselors. They have to change a tire, and Jason attacks Mike with a cross wrench and crushes his head with the car. Sally and Ryan attempt to leave but find the missing counselors' heads in his Jeep. Sally sees Brian and hallucinates that he's Jason attacking her in a bathroom, and she kills him. The owner shows up and is shot through the neck with an arrow. Jason murders Sasha, and Jason murders Ryan as Rico and Alicia run away. Jason hands Sally the machete, and she immediately attacks him with it and runs away. Jason hunts down Rico and Alicia and murders them. Sally is picked up by an elderly couple in an RV and taken to the hospital, where she is interrogated by a cop. Jason shows up and kills the cop as Sally runs through a hospital of dead bodies, where she is eventually captured by Jason. Jason is captured by the government, and several execution attempts are made, but they all fail. It is decided that Jason Voorhees should be cryogenically frozen and moved to another facility for further examination. Due to a guard throwing a blanket over him, Jason's IV is knocked loose, allowing him to escape and kill Dr. Wimmer, who had decided to supersede freezing Jason and transport him soft. While chasing head researcher Rowan LaFontaine through the facility, Jason is knocked into the cryogenic chamber by the scientist, who is also frozen when Jason punctures the unit's door and stabs her, causing the facility to lock down. A class from Earth 2, headed by Braithwaite Lowe, go on a field trip to the original Earth, which had become uninhabitable centuries prior. Discovering the remains of the Camp Crystal Lake research facility, the students find Jason Voorhees and Rowan LaFontaine and bring them aboard their ship, the Grendel. Killing several students, crew members, and hired security, Jason is briefly killed by android KM-14, but is resurrected by the Grendel's malfunctioning nanobots, which also give him a metallic exoskeleton and upgraded abilities. Rowan, Suneron, and KM reach his rescue vessel, the Tiamat, while Sergeant Brodsky stays behind, sacrificing himself to stop Uber Jason from attacking the Tiamat. A power armor-wearing Brodsky tackles Uber Jason outside the Tiamat, sending the two of them hurtling through Earth 2's atmosphere. Uber Jason's charred mask lands in the lake. Now, given I had just described the events of Jason X, those dates are explicitly stated that he was captured in 2008, the prologue's in 2010, and the future is in 2455. Some of these movies were easier to place than others, Jason Takes Manhattan being the most annoying one to deal with, which is just par for that movie because it's just not good in any way, even trying to fit it on a timeline. Now, no timeline is going to be perfect with this series, there's a lot of contradictions, but I spent a lot of time and effort into trying to fit this as best I can, probably at the sake of my own sanity. Again, fuck Jason Takes Manhattan, but I would be lying if I said I didn't actually have fun doing this. And given that it's Friday the 13th, why not do something special for Friday the 13th? As you can see, I have Never Hike Alone on in the background, but doing a timeline for part 3 of my Friday the 13th specials, I think is the most fitting. But thank you for watching, and those of you who are still here, being patient. I know I haven't made a video in quite a bit of time, but I want to get back to doing more, especially since I'm about to move into my new place. So for that case, don't forget to like, share, comment, and if you haven't, subscribe. Bye bye, and I love you all.